this meeting of the Committee of the Whole, Operations and Administration is now called to order. I would ask that you rise as you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us not forget those who have served our community and who are no longer with us, so we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. Mr. Deputy Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Through the chair, the roll call has been taken.
Fantastic. Okay, I would just like to remind the committee and our viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings and operating as efficiently as possible. All members will be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for committee members should be turned on. Staff who are requested to join the meeting they need to answer questions of members of the committee. Any members of the committee should indicate they wish to speak by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen. I'll also accept you waving your hands around if you'd like. Clerk staff will lower the hand when you've been recognized by the chair for your speaking opportunity. In the event of a connection or service interruption that affects quorum of the committee, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All right, with that out of the way, members of the committee, are there any declarations of a pecuniary interest for any items appearing on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Separations of items for consideration and consent items for discussion purposes. The following items will be automatically separated. Item 6.1.5, as there is a presentation. And please note that clause B of item 6.1.2 should be reflected to state an upset limit of $78,300 and not $80,000. This correction has been changed in the agenda. So at this time, I'd like to ask any committee member for any item they would like to see separated. Okay, Councillor Martin, you're up. You are muted, sir.
Item 6.1.1. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Next up, Councillor Sless.
No, Councillor Martin separated what I'd like to speak to.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, 6.1.5 and 6.2.2.
6.2.2. Great. Councillor McCurry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to separate 6.1.2.
Amazing. Are there any other items for separation from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Martin, could you please move the motion to approve all items for consideration consent not separated for discussion purposes?
Certainly. I move, seconded by Councillor McCurry, that all items for consideration consent 6.1 and 6.2 not separated for discussion purposes be approved.
Excellent. Any discussion? Okay, I will now call to vote. Deputy Clerk, could you please read the titles of all items that are subject to the vote?
Certainly, through the chair, the following items are subject to the vote. Item 6.1.3, Bell Homestead National Historic Site Policies Review. Item 6.1.4, Restoration of the Brant War Memorial. Item 6.1.6, Brantford Police Services Facility Redevelopment Funding Sources. Item 6.1.7, Final Report City Accommodation Task Force. Item 6.2.3, 2020 Municipal Cultural Plan Annual Report. Item 6.2.4, 2020 Year-End Economic Update. And item 6.2.1.1, Committee of the Whole Operation and Administration, April 13th, 2021 minutes. All items not separated for discussion purposes, carries unanimously on recorded vote. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows. Councillors Vanderstout, Slaz, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, let's move on to presentations and delegations. Members of the committee, there is one delegation on tonight's agenda, and in keeping with the City of Brantford procedural bylaw section 15.6.2, please ensure all comments are directly related to the matter before the committee. So I would like to welcome Tajinder Tour of Shoeless Joe's Brantford regarding item 7.1. You have 10 minutes for your remarks, inclusive of committee members. Mr. Deputy Clerk, is our delegation in attendance?
The chair, I believe Mr. Tour is unmuted and he could begin now.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you for coming. If you could please begin your presentation starting now. I will allow a few minutes to get the technical errors. This is not eating into your time. If you can hear me.
Through the chair, we're just working through some technical issues. He is calling through his phone, so we should have him unmuted and ready to go in a matter of a couple seconds.
No problem. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you for appearing before this committee. If you would like to proceed with your presentation, you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I gave the letter along with the norm. So respected chair and members of the city council, I request you to please approve the norm, Shoeless Joe's high water bill. This will help us survive in these difficult COVID times, and we have been closed like 3 times by the ministry already. So we got this enormous water bill amounting to more than 15,000 for the whole year. The usual bill should be like 3,000 to 4,000 for the whole year. We had these silent toilet water leaks that were very hard to detect. So we received our September bill late. The bill was going to the landlord. Also, as a new business, we had no information on prior year's data to compare this bill to. Then we got the November bill, and communication from the utilities department. The bill was high, so I immediately reached out to the plumber and got everything fixed. But by that time, it was very late. Everything has been resolved now, so our current monthly bill is in line with what it should be. The last bill we received was 376.07. So I just request as a small business, if you approve this will help us survive in these difficult COVID times. Also, I would like to add, right from the start of this COVID, we have been volunteering. Apart from our normal operations, we have been cooking meals for homeless every second weekend and delivering them at Victoria Park. We will continue with our initiatives until this pandemic is over. So again, if you approve this, this will help us in these difficult COVID times. This will help us survive. And thank you for your attention on this matter.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. We still have 8 minutes remaining. Councillor Martin, questions for the delegation?
Thank you. Through you to the delegation. When did you start your tenancy of that unit?
I'm sorry?
When did you take over the unit that you're in?
December 2019.
Okay. Do you know why your water bill was sent to your landlord instead of you?
I do not know. So initially it was going to a landlord. So then I called and then I did provide my home address, but it was going to the landlord. I do not know what the issue was, but I contacted and updated my address even from Shoeless Joe's to my home address so that I start receiving these bills and should not be missing any.
Are you receiving the bills now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vanderson.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Good evening, Mr. Tour. Thank you for your presentation today. Now that we are we have figured out how we're communicating with you, how are we communicating with you? Is it through email or text or phone call, or how are we communicating?
You mean the bill?
Yes.
Yeah, I get bill at my home address now, so I'm receiving them at my home address. So it's by the mail.
Okay, so it's a hard copy bill in the mail. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other questions for the delegation from this committee? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Tour, thank you very much for your delegation. We will be having this item moved up on the agenda and we will be discussing it promptly. Okay, and just like that, we move on. Items for consent consideration. The committee will now consider the items that were separated for discussion purposes. Councillor Carpenter, could you please read the motion to place all separated items for consideration consent not previously voted on the floor?
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Cheryl Antosky, that all items for consideration for consent, item 6.1 and 6.2, separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
Okay, any discussion on that? Seeing none, I call the vote.
Through the chair, Chris Coche,
Yes.
Deputy Clerk. At this time, we would just go through each separate item one by one, doing an individual vote for each.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no objections from this committee, item 7.1, water, wastewater, high water bill, 300 King George Road, Unit H7, Shoeless Joe's, will be considered next as there is a delegation. Seeing no objections, Councillor Martin, could you please proceed with your resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move, seconded by Councillor McCurry, whereas council has on occasion reduced individual water bills by 50% in specific circumstances, and whereas COVID-19 lockdowns have caused significant hardships to small business owners, excuse me, and whereas a silent toilet leak led to a significant increase in water consumed at a local restaurant located at 300 King George Road, Unit Hotel 7. Now therefore be it resolved that upon submission of proof of repairs, staff be directed to remove 50% of the water wastewater charges billed over the average for the period from September 4th, 2020 to January 7th, 2021, $5,441.28 from the water wastewater bill for the property at 300 King George Road, Unit H7, and B, that staff be directed to include expanding the eligibility to include small commercial accounts in the high water bill adjustment policy that is currently under review. And if I may, just speaking to this, for some reason, the individual was not receiving his water bills, so he had no way of knowing that there was a problem. And once he did find out there was a problem, he took steps to remedy it. But in the meantime, it consumed a large amount of water that he got no benefit from. So I think it's only appropriate we treat him the same as we have other water customers who have had similar problems. And I hope council can support this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the item? Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to this item and the memo we received this afternoon, it would seem that it would be probably prudent for us to refer this resolution to our legal department and then have them come back with it just in case there's some wording changes that might need to happen. And I believe the concern is around the Municipal Act and whether or not we have the authority actually be able to provide this funding for this item. So I think it would be preferred for us to refer it to legal.
So you're moving a referral?
I'm going to try to.
Do you have a seconder?
Do I have a seconder?
I see a seconder by Councillor Antosky. Okay. Any discussion on the referral, noting only that the discussion is to refer to whom it is referred to and the merit of the referral. Seeing no discussion, call the vote.
The referral of item 7.1 carries on recorded vote of 6-5. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstout, Antosky, Wall, Weaver, Utley, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Sless, Marn, McCreary, Carpenter, and Van Tilborg.
I keep waiting for somebody else to chair the meeting. My apologies. Okay, moving on. 6.1.5, proposed flagpole location for City Hall events. There is a presentation from Gord Gavrilovic, Manager of Facilities Capital Development, to commence. Please commence your presentation, noting that you have 10 minutes inclusive of questions from this committee. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Chair. That was pronounced very well. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I am Gord Gavrilovich, the new Manager of Facilities Capital Development. I am here this evening with Lee Sordo, my Director of Facilities Management Security, as well as Laurie Dawn Cavan, Manager of Community and Corporate Culture, who worked on the corporate policy changes. I would also like to acknowledge contributions to the report from Dave Zimmer and Vicky Armitage. I will give a brief presentation on report proposing a new location for flagpoles for City Hall flag raising events. Next slide, please. Typically, ceremonial flag raising celebrations have been held at the City Hall. Examples of some of the larger events include Black History Month, Volunteer Week, and Brantford Pride Week. As we transition from the current City Hall to the new City Hall, these flag raising celebrations will need to transition. Unfortunately, the new City Hall location does not have suitable space for flag raising events. The streetscape surrounding the building is constrained, and there are busy roads making it unsafe for participants. Harmony Square, a city-owned property across the street and visible from the new City Hall, as well as already being a central place of activity and gatherings for the downtown area, was identified by staff as an ideal and complementary location for future flag raising celebrations. City staff analyzed what would be required to allow for flag raising celebrations at Harmony Square. At the current City Hall, there are 2 flagpoles flying the Canada and city flags, with special celebration flags typically added to the city flag during raising ceremonies. Ideally, the number of flagpoles at the new location would be at least 3 flying the Canada, Ontario, and city flags, with a special occasion flag added as required during raising ceremonies. There is a desire to have sound and public address system available during the ceremonies. Unfortunately, these systems are already present at Harmony Square. Another desire is to have LED floodlighting illuminating the flags, including the ability to change the color of the lighting to acknowledge a variety of different events and celebrations. The Sanderson Center has such a system which illuminates the sign valence at the front entrance, and the colors are changed as required to acknowledge various events and celebrations. Flagstone pavers will also be installed at the base of flagpoles to allow for easy access during raising ceremonies. And it should be noted, no trees will be removed or affected by the placement of flagpoles, since the flags will be a considerable distance above the top of the small ornamental trees. Additionally, the size of the tree crown will remain small and not impact the poles. The flagpoles will be designed to consider the safety of the general public and to prevent any tampering or vandalism of the flags. Design and construction staff developed design plans for 4 proposed concept areas. However, concept area number 3 was deemed to not be a viable option to move forward with in the report, so 3 concept area plans will be presented. Next slide, please. Concept area number 1 is located in the grass area adjacent to the walkway on Deluzzi Street. Advantages of this option include the desired 3 flagpoles. It is close to the new City Hall, and gathering spaces available on the walkway, which will not interfere with entrance into the square. Disadvantages of this option include that it is too close to the pedestrian sidewalk, making it awkward and hard to accommodate large gatherings, as well as it does not have the ceremonial space for potentially solemn gatherings. Next slide, please. Concept area number 2 is located at the prominent area adjacent to the water fountain near Colburn Street. Advantages of this option include good visibility from inside the square, as well as from Deluzzi and Colburn Streets. It has space to accommodate large gatherings, as well as having the ceremonial space for potentially solemn occasions. This location also does not interfere with the operation of the water fountain or with the placement of the seasonal Christmas tree. This is also the lowest cost option. Disadvantages of this option are that there are only 2 flagpoles, making this the least flexible option for displaying flags, as well as not being a prominent enough display that befits the new City Hall. Next slide, please. Concept area number 4, also located at the prominent area adjacent to the water fountain near Colburn Street. Advantages of this option include having 4 flagpoles allowing for the display of the Canada, Ontario, City, and perhaps a permanent Harmony Square type flag, as well as having a dedicated flagpole for special occasion flags. There is good visibility from inside the square, as well as from Deluzzi and Colburn Streets, with space to accommodate large gatherings, as well as having the ceremonial space for potentially solemn occasions. The location also does not interfere with the operation of the water fountain or with the placement of the seasonal Christmas tree. This location, in my opinion, is an impressive and prominent display that befits the new City Hall, and I think the photo truly demonstrates this. The only real disadvantage of this option is that it is the highest cost option. Although this is the most costly option, staff are of the opinion that this concept provides the prominence needed for celebrating, acknowledging, inspiring, and bringing awareness in our community to a variety of different occasions. Therefore, staff recommend concept area number 4 as the concept for flagpoles at Harmony Square. Next slide, please. Just a brief overview of the policy changes resulting from the location change of the flagpoles. Corporate Policy 4, flag flying at municipal buildings, and Corporate Policy 49, proclamation requests, were reviewed and updated as a result of the proposed changes to the City Hall flag locations. Changes include changing the name of Policy 4 to flag flying at municipal venues to reflect all flags flying at city venues. Moving the details specific to flag raising ceremonies to Policy 49 to align with proclamation requests, and referencing that these ceremonies will take place at Harmony Square and not at City Hall. Changing the name of Policy 49 to Community Requests, Proclamations, and Flag Raising Ceremonies to reflect the services provided to the community. Incorporate community requests for both proclamations and flag raising ceremonies into one policy. Revise the title of the online form. Add language about Sanderson Center marquee facade lighting and message add-on, and add language that although Harmony Square will be the central location for flag raising ceremonies, the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center and the Brantford Fire Department may be considered as alternate locations for these events. Final slide, please. This concludes my presentation, and I can now answer any questions. Thank you.
Gord, thank you for your presentation, and well within time. We have 2 minutes remaining. Up next, Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Gord, thank you very much. And I wanted to thank you for the flag raising policy. When I was elected mayor and assumed office, it was pretty skimpy, the policy, and it was often a quandary. Do we raise the flag or not, and when do you do it and when you don't do it. And this has answered a lot of the questions, that it incorporates a lot of formal flag flying and flag raising policies. So there's still a bit of discretion to the mayor in the case of there being some special situation that requires. But I got a question for you, and it's a real protocol question. The Canadian flag should always be on the left, in the center, but to the left. And so what will be considered the facing side of these flagpoles, of the four ones? Is it the Colburn Street side, or is it the Harmony Square side? Which one is that, and why?
Through the chair, my opinion is it's the Harmony Square side, but if Lise is available or Laurie Dawn, they could comment on this as well.
Hi, everyone. Through the chair. So we would use it from an observation perspective, with the gathering inside the Harmony Square looking towards the flags, towards Colburn Street. That would be how you acknowledge the placement of the order of the flags.
You got to correct that picture then. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, and well with under the 10 minutes. So thank you everybody for your expediency, and we will now get this item placed on the floor. Mr. Deputy Clerk, does this need to be read?
Through the chair, it does not. The item's already on the floor.
Stunning. So discussion on the item. Okay, Councillor McCurry.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Through you to staff, it says in the report that this is already funded. Could you elaborate and tell us the funding source and the amount in that account?
Through the chair, this will be funded through the existing new City Hall project. And we estimate the cost to be around the $25,000 mark.
And the City Hall project, is it on budget?
My understanding it is.
Is that, could staff please confirm that it is?
Hi, through the chair, this is Lise Sordo, Director of Facilities Management and Security, and I can confirm that we're on budget.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciated. Now, with respect to the two policies that are refers to here, I guess tonight is not the night to suggest changes to those two policies. That would have to come at a different time. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk.
Through the chair, I believe the report has the appendices attached with the policy changes. So if you're looking to amend the policy, now would be the time to make an amendment to that, so that by the time it comes to council, we'll have the proper bylaw in front of members of council.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm just looking for the wording. The clerk wouldn't happen to have that, would he? Let's see, here we go. So if it's okay with the chair, I would introduce that now.
We do have one more speaker in the queue. Would you mind?
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll have it ready when you come back to me.
Thank you. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I probably know more about flag raisings than anyone else around the table just by dint of experience. I can say this about flag raisings. I mean, the most solemn occasion that we're involved in as a municipality, of course, is on Remembrance Day. And next to that is flag raisings. Flag raisings have a real substantive significance to the people involved, the organizations involved, or if it's someone's passing. I had underestimated what it means to people when they come and they see a flag raising. And so you want a setting that speaks to that symbolic significance, that looks balanced, that looks appropriate, that in some ways is impressive and conveys the impression of the event of a flag raising. And so I think, you want symmetry. And so having 4 flag poles, I think makes perfect sense for another reason as well, because I've run into this now on a couple of occasions. So we have 2 flag poles and they're not lighted and there's no sound system. And so the only person who clearly gets his or her message across is town crier David McGee. And so this will make it easier to do that, especially for those who come, and generally people will speak to it who are from an organization, and many of them are soft-spoken. So this will help them and feel more comfortable, I think. But it's, you've got 2 flag poles, so down comes the city flag, and sometimes you have 2 flags because it might be there's 2 occasions or 2 proclamations over a week, and it gets really confusing. Which one goes on top? Which one goes on the bottom? Which one goes up first? And with the 4, you'll still have the national flag, which should never come down. And then, of course, the Ontario flag. And then you'll have the city flag, which will be available to come down if you have 2 flags going up. And then for those, but half the time we don't have a flag flying for a group or an event, then we can fly the flag of, Harmony Square or maybe Laurier. So I think it'll be very impressive. It'll be a really good addition to Harmony Square. And of course, very convenient to New City Hall. So although there is an additional cost here, I think it's totally justified. And again, given that this is a generational decision, that those flagpoles will be there for generations, for 40, 50, 60 years. And so we want to make sure we get it right. And I think that design gets it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Up next, Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Gord. Gord, you referred to lighting, and I'm a little unclear there. Are these flags going to be lit? And is that included in the budget, or are you somehow tapping into the Sanderson Center? Can you explain that?
Yeah, through the chair, the intent is to light the flags from below on site there, and the cost of the lighting is included in that budget estimate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, seeing no more speakers, Councillor McCreary, would you like to introduce your amendment? What's that? I can't hear you.
That's because someone didn't push my unmute button. Is that better?
You sound wonderful.
Thank you. Well, that's kind of you to say so, Mr. Chair. You're doing a good job so far tonight. So this would be a change that would come to the proclamation policy. And I don't know if that can be put up on the screen, but currently the wording allows for a request to come from a local citizen, sorry, a local resident or organization. And I'd like to see us change the wording. And I don't know if Chris might have this wording. It did go to Tanya earlier. So we changed the wording, deleting a local resident or organization, inserting in its place City of Brantford resident, City of Brantford property owner, or City of Brantford resident on behalf of an organization. I'd be seeking a seconder for that clarity. And I say I have Councillor Martin as the seconder. And Mr. Chair, what that does is it puts the onus on this being proclamations that arise locally. And we don't see much of it lately, but there was a time when we'd get all sorts of wild and crazy things that came from Saskatchewan and North Dakota and all over the planet, really not representing local organizations. And I think this puts the onus on those who want a proclamation to have a local presence. And without any disrespect to our surrounding neighbors, every other community around us has the opportunity to do a proclamation at their council or organizational meeting, and ours should only reflect the desires of Brantford folks. So I would hope that everybody would support that. And I'll just say it one more time, that the wording you see in front of you would replace the nondescript wording, which now reads local resident or organization. So it would be more specific to originating from folks from the city of Brantford, because it is our community, it is our flagpole, and it should speak on behalf of us. And therefore, the person requesting it should be somebody that lives here, owns property here, or can represent an organization.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. I see Councillor Antosky speaking to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the intent. I do have I feel a bit of caution because there are some national and provincial organizations that call for proclamations that do involve our local citizens, but we may not have a chapter here, or we may not have. So if I'm right, maybe Councillor Curry is also saying that if a resident brings it forward that lives in the city of Brantford, even if it's a national initiative, that would still be okay. I just want some clarity on the intent there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Antosky. Up next, Mayor No, I see your hand's gone down. Do you still want to speak? Okay, Councillor Carpenter, you're up.
Yeah, I have some of the same concerns. For example, the MS Society, which is near and dear to my heart. You know, the board, they represent Hallam, Norfolk, Brantford, Brant. It could be that their executive doesn't have a current sitting member that is living in the city of Brantford, and so therefore the center of all they do can't be represented. I've got some concern with this general thinking that if you live in the county, it's not good for the city. I have some concerns with this, so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Seeing no first-time speakers, Councillor McCurry, second time speaking to your amendment.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Antosky reminded me that I did leave something out of my speaking notes, namely that, of course, the city councillor is also a resident, so it wouldn't have to be any, you know, if Councillor Carpenter had a national organization without a local chapter and they requested this, go to Councillor Carpenter and he could make the request on behalf of them. So a resident is a city councillor, and councillors would also be entitled to request a proclamation on behalf of somebody that might not live in the city. And with respect to the county, you know, we love them a lot, but you know, they've got an opportunity to do this on their own turf, and I'm sure their own citizens would be bereft not to encourage their guys to do something in their own community. So hopefully everybody can support this with the clarity I've offered, Mr. Chair.
Okay, seeing no further speakers, Mr. Deputy Clerk, call to vote on the amendment.
The amendment to item 6.1.5 carries on a recorded vote of 9-2. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Celeste, Martin, Antosky, Wall, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Carpenter and Van Tilburg.
Councillor Martin, you're up.
Thank you. And I appreciate that the amendment carried. I think it's a valid change and improvement to our policy. And one of the things I've found over the years is if you want to find out what proper flag etiquette is, simply do it wrong and a veteran will be happy to correct you on it. Unfortunately, that's a resource that we are sadly losing fairly quickly, but it is one that has served me well, and I've learned a lot about flag protocol from veterans of the Second World War, and I appreciate their guidance.
Are there any other first time or second time or any speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, I'd like to take a moment to speak to the motion as a whole. So some of my most fondest memories of downtown Brantford are in Harmony Square. The events, the fun, the excitement. You know, Harmony Square is just such a beautiful showpiece for our downtown. And if you haven't been, I highly recommend you come down and see it. I love the idea that these 4 flagpoles could be held high and admired and appreciated. And Councillor Martin hit the nail on the head. The ability to be able to raise those flags in Harmony Square, and a flag that we so choose, came at such an incredible cost. And it is thanks to veterans and those who fought for the right for us to be able to raise that flag. And this is an amazing occasion. It's going to be great for the city of Brantford. I'm thrilled to support it. And I couldn't think of a better place than Harmony Square. And I see second speaking opportunity, Councillor McCreary, just before the bell.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And your remarks reminded me of something I should say. For those who've been around a while, this was a very contentious project when it was initiated, the Harmony Square project. There was some very intense debate over it, and time heals all. And now, you know, unless I'm around to remind you of these things, you'd never realize from knowing how dear it is to the hearts of the community that at one point in time, this was argued over quite fiercely. So, you know, all matters of contention pass. And eventually what's best for the community weighs out. And I'm pleased to see that this park has been a success. And having our ceremony there from now on, rather than at what we'll soon call Old City Hall, I think it's going to be good for the community and good for the downtown, and certainly good for Harmony Square. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further speakers, Mr. Deputy Clerk, please call the vote.
Item 6.1.5 as amended carries unanimously on recorded votes. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows. Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis.
And as per the chair's roadmap so diligently prepared by our amazing deputy clerk, I'm instructed to continue on with the separated items. Moving on to item 6.1.1, Ada Avenue and Palmerston Avenue temporary full closure. Mr. Mayor, I believe you wanted this separated.
I believe.
The floor is yours.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I was the one that asked for this to be separated. I had a question for staff.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Go ahead.
One of the things in the report, it talks about the need for garbage collection trucks to back up on the one block section because of the end being closed. My question through to staff is, if this closure becomes permanent because people agree with this trial process, is there room to accommodate a turnaround at the closed end of the street in both streets?
Through the chair, Mark Jacqueline, Director of Operational Services. So at the conclusion of the period, we are going to be doing some type of assessment to review to determine if there is enough space to actually make a permanent change to the roadway to actually put in a full area to make the turnaround at the end.
So you haven't done an assessment of that as yet?
Through the chair, we have not done that assessment yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Jacqueline. Thank you for the report and recommendations, very well written. My question is also about garbage trucks picking up waste recycling trucks. And I hadn't thought about that, especially with Ada Ave. But we already have some very short dead-end streets with no turnaround in the city. And I know there's at least 2 or 3 in Ward 2. So my question is, how do waste and recycling trucks navigate those dead-end streets right now?
Through the chair, the waste collection actually have 2 people on their vehicles. So one would be the spotter that they back up. When it comes to recycling, the actual supervisor would have to come out and help back the vehicle up.
Has there been any incidents that you're aware of, Mark?
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mark. Mark, I'm a little concerned. This is a 5-month trial, correct? And at the end of 5 months, we're going to remove it?
Through the chair, we will be doing we will bring forward another report at the end of the 5-month trial to discuss next steps.
Well, here's my concern, and tell me how you're addressing it, Mark. We put up these barriers and we're retraining people and we're creating different habits as far as driving. We're not having people turning left off Brand Ave and all the things that we don't want them to do. So then at the end of the 5 months, we take the barriers away and now they can do it again. And if it turns out that the data says we should be doing this permanently, then we will reinstall a permanent solution. After we've trained them not to do that, then we allowed them to do it again. And now we try to retrain them again. To me, this should be seamless. That if, as the project is underway, by the end of the 5 months, we should have the data already analyzed and the potential on how we can do this designed. In the event that it turns out to be yes, then we transition from temporary to permanent all in one motion, instead of unblocking the street, allowing all the bad things to happen again, and then go through the process of creating another project to do it in a permanent way. To me, that's very cumbersome, and it's very awkward. And what we're doing is we're untraining, and then we're training again. If we've got the temporary in, it should transition directly from there. If the community approves it, it should transition directly into a permanent situation, not reopened and then at a later date install the permanent. To me, that just makes no sense. Can you comment on that and how we could overcome that problem?
Yeah, through the chair and the general manager of public works, Councillor Sass, you're absolutely right. Most likely our recommendation will be to keep it closed until we're able to do some of these studies on how traffic has moved around, how we can deal with garbage, what the design will be. It's not our intent to train, change, train again. That's not something we would be doing. So in essence, we're providing you in about 4 or 5 months time with what we've heard in the neighborhood once they've had a chance to experience real life closure, and then come back with a recommendation. And our idea and our thought is that if we hear from the neighborhood they don't like it, we'll obviously be telling you that. If they do like it, we would not be removing these barriers while we go and have an ultimate solution of closing it back up. That's not the intent that we would have.
Okay, that's not the intent, but that's what the resolution says, that we're going to leave it in place for 5 months to gather the data. Do you need an amendment to this to make it say what it actually means?
Through the chair, no, we'll be reporting back is what the report says. And in that report back, we'll have a recommendation to keep this either closed in the interim while we design, or if the community speaks up and it's a change, then the recommendation will have that change as well. So we don't need an amendment to that report.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Mark and Indy. The second concern that I have is the second to last house. I believe it's number 4 on I believe it's Palmerston, or is it Ada? John, help me out. It's Ada? Palmerston.
Palmerston.
Number 4, Palmerston, has made the request, and Indy, we've had you out there and had a look at it to ensure that their driveway enters off of their street, not off of Brant Ave. And it was indicated that there's room to do that. I'd just like reassurance again that that is in fact the case.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, through the chair. Yes, that is the case. There is enough room for that vehicle to back up onto Palmerston Ave and exit that way.
Okay, so we're on solid ground to let the resident know that yes, in fact, they're going to be entering off their own street, not Brant Ave.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Indy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor McCreary, you're next.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to see the Ward 2 councillors have been tenacious in terms of bringing this forward. I think it's a very good example of how ward councillors can support the neighborhoods and improve the neighborhoods. And Councillor Martin and I have a project like this coming up this month. And I would hark back to an issue that was before us last month where we delayed the Dunstan Street road diet until we could have a proper chance to discuss things with the neighbors and put it in place. So congrats to the councillors. I also want to single out Warren Bayshard for special mention tonight. I know the neighbors have been quite keen on this for a while, and I think Warren was one of the leading advocates of this, and I'm sure he's very pleased to see this on our agenda. I'm glad Councillor Sless raised the fact of this being a continuous project rather than a 5-month to be supplanted by another one. And there is one question I'd like to ask engineering staff. I'm afraid I don't know the proper name for it. In Calgary, they're called car traps, which permit access through a road opening for large wheeled buses, fire trucks, and garbage trucks. But signage is put in place to inform automobile drivers that they will get trapped in the car trap if they proceed. And I'm just wondering if staff are familiar with that premise and that type of device.
Sorry, Mark, if you know. Yeah.
Yeah, so just actually through the chair, I actually do not know that device, but we can definitely take a look at that and make sure that's possibly an option at the end of the 5-month period.
Yeah, it's worth considering, Mark. It's a very simple thing, and it's highly effective in preventing transit from one neighborhood to another in the city of Calgary, and it certainly would be worth looking at for this application as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, seeing no further first-time speakers, Councillor Otley, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. When the study comes back to us on the permanent closure, will that include any other options or just the barriers blocking off Abbott and Palmerston?
So through the chair, the idea is to get the information from the residents to determine whether they want to continue to permanently close or open the streets back up. If it's to permanently close, then we will be coming back with another recommendation to do a full study on how to properly close the street and whether we can actually get turnarounds or, as Councillor Curry mentioned, some other type of device in order to get cars in and out. So we would be doing a look at that, and then we would be designing that in 2022 and possibly installation at that point, provided we get into the capital budget.
Thank you, Mark. And just a heads up that one of the residents on Scarf Road that is comes off of Bryant Ave. There's a no left turn signal, no left turn sign there as well, but a number of drivers are ignoring that, just like they are at Palmerston and Ada. So that may need a little bit of attention as well. But let's deal with Palmerston and Ada first, and then we can learn from that experience. So thank you very much, and great work by staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, seeing no further speakers, Mr. Deputy Clerk, please call the vote.
Item 6.1.1 carries unanimously on recorded votes. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Slas, Marn, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you. Moving on to 6.1.2, non-competitive procurement of consultant services for the water and wastewater financial plan update, separated by Councillor McCreary.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. This is a non-competitive procurement, and we seem to ebb and flow with respect to how councils award tenders and proposal calls ending up. And we seem to be in a cycle of going for single source procurements more than we have in some years past. And I'm wondering if there's any particular reason why we would not have gone to the market to get bids from other companies whom I'm sure are probably equally qualified to do the work that this consultant is doing, albeit they've done a lot of work for us in the past. So I wonder if through you, Mr. Chair, staff could comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Selby Congera, Director, Environmental Services. The reason why the staff recommended is that they are qualified and experienced consultant to prepare this financial plan, and they have, sorry, my mic is making some noise. So they've also recently completed the development charges, area-specific development charges, master servicing plan, and fiscal strategy for new expansion lands. They're currently working on development charges. So all the information from those studies feed into the financial plan that we are currently talking about. And they've proposed a fee of $78,300 as we identified in the council report. 7 years ago, when staff completed similar update, it costed the city $68,000. So staff felt that the price proposed by the consultant is reasonable. I think the most important of all, the financial plan update was supposed to be completed in 2020. Because there was a delay in the official plan, master servicing plan, staff received the extension from the province. So the consultant could complete this financial plan in 8 months' time, which is the first quarter of 2022, and we can submit the financial plan to the province by that timeline.
Thank you, Sylvie. When was the last time that we provided this report to the province, the one that we're speaking of now?
We provided in 2015, and the report is due to the province once every 5 years.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's a good explanation. The work product that you mentioned that they had performed, which is going into this study, we do have the final reports of the previous work products, which could have been handed off to another consultant, though. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. And so any information from these studies can be given to any other consultant who can do it. It takes time for them to pick up all that background information. So there could be a delay in completing the final product by the first quarter of 2022.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sylvie.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, Mr. Deputy Clerk, please call the vote.
Item 6.1.2 carries on recorded vote of 10-1. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Slash, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Moving right along, item number 6.2.2, wastewater operations 2020 annual summary report. And this one was the one separated by Mr. Mayor Davis. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I'm going to take my glasses off because I want you to be able to see just how excited I am by the wastewater treatment staff we have here at City. I'm dead serious here because, you know, we sing the praises of our water treatment staff. They do a top-notch job of giving us water quality, excellent water quality, and the water we draw from the river to drink and use in our industries and our homes. You know what? We have a very important obligation, responsibility to the users of the river and the river system itself to properly treat the water that we then use and put into the river, especially when Six Nations draws its water just downstream from us. And, you know, we don't say enough about what a fine job our wastewater treatment staff do. But not only the staff, the managers, right from Selby on down. And they, in fact, have received an award, and I'll mention that in a minute. But I also want to thank the previous council because, you know, back in 2014, that council realized that we had to do more to protect the river and treat the wastewater that we put into the river. And so that began a process, I think it started in 2014, of improving the water treatment process. It included bringing the operation in-house from the Ontario Clean Water Agency in 2015. It also included the water sewer bylaw that dealt with, there were problems with industrial users putting in particularly noxious effluent into our system, and that was solved for that bylaw. And then, you know what, our staff have done everything possible, despite the fact that many parts of our facility are aging, to just make it the most optimal, efficient operation that they possibly can make it. They're constantly dedicated to continuous improvement, which should be music to your ears, Councillor Utley. And then, of course, over the next 10 years in our capital plan, we are going to be replacing and upgrading a number of portions of the facility to make sure that it continues to be, that we continue to do a great job in treating our effluent. So how have we done in comparison to the other treatment plants across the watershed? And there's 29 of them. And this is my experience now at the GRCA that I've learned quite a bit. And so I'm going to ask staff, can you please share a graph that I've obtained? There we go. So the GRCA has a recognition program for the 29 treatment plants in our watershed, and this is for 2019. And you're going to see over there, Kitchener is the largest plant. We're the second largest plant. But we were awarded a silver medal. We tied for second with Elmira and Air. And we're hoping that for 2020, we'll repeat, maybe even with a shot at the gold. And so this is prepared by the GRCA. It's rating the plants through the system in terms of voluntary compliance with a number of standards. Those plants where the gray is, well, they've had a few problems. But I even checked with the GRCA staff. They have a manager there who helps coordinate the programs across the watershed, with being totally dedicated to improving the treatment of wastewater. And this is what he had to say about our staff and our operation. The Brantford Wastewater Treatment Plant, his name is Mark Anderson, and he's the water quality engineer there, is a leader in our watershed when it comes to optimization, and your staff, Selvie, Ron, Tim, and all the operations staff have done an excellent job every single day to make the Grand River better. We're continually encouraging other municipalities in our watershed to follow Brantford's lead. We're making progress. And you can see from this graph, and actually the city of Kitchener, they just recently did an upgrade to it's actually the region that operates about 12 facilities up there, the Kitchener facility being the largest and having the greatest impact on the river. They have actually over the last year improved their operation, substantially reducing nitrates and phosphorus released in the river. It's actually quite noticeable, the river quality improvement. And so, I say to all the other municipalities, including our neighbors, the county of Brant, that let's have a bit of a friendly competition, and let's see if we can, together, following best practices, bring everybody up to the point where we're putting water back into the river that's actually cleaner than what it is that we pull out of the river. And it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of effort. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think we've got a great complement of staff at our facility. And over the next 10 years, we'll give them the facility that is deserving of their efforts. And so I know I've gone past 4 minutes, but we don't say enough about them. And my hat's off to our wastewater treatment staff and all our environmental services staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you're right, you did go over your 4 minutes, but you were complimenting our incredible staff, and I owe that. Okay, are there any other first-time speakers? And no second-time speakers. Mr. Deputy Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Item 6.2.2 carries unanimously on recorded vote. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Celeste, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis.
Moving right along to item 7 on our agenda, which is resolutions. Councillor Antosky, you're up for 7.2.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Yes, so moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, has made funding available through the Municipal Asset Management Program, MAMP, and whereas staff have previously submitted proposals for this funding opportunity that were deemed to be ineligible, and whereas staff has identified the project to assess bridges and culverts under 3 meters as an eligible project for this funding, and whereas the approved budget of $175,000 is available in the capital budget to complete this project, and whereas FCM will provide funding up to a maximum of $50,000 for the MAMP, and whereas staff are required to forward a declaration of the City of Brantford's support and financial contribution toward this initiative to FCM as part of the application process. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to return $50,000 from capital project ID number 1903 to the capital funding envelope 537, which is roads and related, if the city is successful with this grant application, and that the city clerk be directed to forward a copy of this resolution to FCM declaring the City of Brantford's financial contribution toward the initiative of $125,000 as approved through the 2019 capital budget process. And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to speak to this, Indy's department has been working very hard looking at a number of different grants and you know, kind of looking for anything that we've got on the books that will be eligible. So this is a good opportunity. I asked Indy how many bridges we have that are 3 meters or under, and I was shocked to hear there's 189 of them. So this grant would be absolutely very helpful, and it would allow our staff to take inventory and assess the conditions, and it'll strengthen their knowledge of our assets. So these grants are helpful. It's helping municipalities really focus on their municipal asset. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, on the managing our municipal assets. So, and you know, we've heard many times it's if we measure, we manage, right? And that's what this is part of. So, I don't know. I think this is a pretty easy one to approve. So I hope we get approval on this one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Antosky. Councillor Vanderstelt, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair Wall. I applaud Councillor Antosky for this. Anytime we can get some interested dollars into Brantford to repair or even assess what our assets are, what condition they're at, towards making it a better city. Absolutely wonderful, 100% support. And if there are any more, please bring them on in. I'm sure you'll get a unanimous vote every single time. Thank you.
Seeing no speakers, Mr. Deputy Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Item 7.2 carries unanimously on recorded vote. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Slesmarn, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, and Mayor Davis.
Regarding item 7.3, Councillor McCreary, you're up.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And to quote you, I'm very excited to be bringing this evening. It's seconded by my friend Councillor Antosky, and I'll read you the resolution, Mr. Chair. And you'll please make note there is one change in it, as I'll highlight as I go through. Whereas the City of Brantford's Cultural Hub Task Force is anticipated to meet its mandate in June 2021 and expected to make recommendations to Council by the beginning of the third quarter 2021. And whereas Brantford City Council established a consolidated museum and archives facility task force in 2020 to focus on and make recommendations with respect to actions that should be taken by the City of Brantford to consult with the Brantford Museum community, staff and volunteers, and the larger community to determine the desire for and feasibility of a consolidated museum and archives facility in the City of Brantford. Whereas the mandates of both task forces align and complement one another, and efficiencies can be realized by incorporating the research and deliverables of the Cultural Hub Task Force with the mandate and anticipated deliverables of the Consolidated Museum and Archives Task Force, now therefore be it resolved, A, that the Cultural Hub Task Force be disbanded upon the completion of identifying a location for a cultural hub in Brantford as the final deliverable within the task force mandate to be received at Council on or before September 30th, 2021. That's a change from June 30th, 2021, Mr. Chair. And B, that the Consolidated Museum and Archives Task Force be disbanded, having not assembled to date, one of the more quickly productive committees we've ever had. And C, that a new task force be established and named the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force. And D, that the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force be comprised of the following members. Representatives of Brantford City Council, being Councillor Antosky, myself, Councillor Utley, Councillor Sless, and Councillor Wall, and 4 citizen appointees. And E, that the task force be supported by City of Brantford staff liaisons as selected by the CAO to provide technical and operational advice and staff assistance. The city clerk or designate to assist with agenda preparation, minute taking, and meeting prep, and other staff is needed to support the mandate and deliverables of the task force. And F, that the deliverables of the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force be established to serve as a governance entity that focuses on and makes recommendations with respect to actions that should be taken by the City of Brantford to consult with the Brantford Museum Committee, staff and volunteers, and the larger community to determine the desire for and the feasibility of a consolidated museum and archives facility in the city of Brantford, and 1, conduct consultation with the wider cultural community, as well as staff and volunteers of all museums within the boundaries of the city of Brantford that meet the International Council of Museums definition of a museum, to determine the desire for and feasibility of a community, heritage, and cultural space in the city of Brantford. Number 2, conduct public consultation to determine the desire for a community, heritage, and cultural space in the city of Brantford that incorporates the research results conducted by the Cultural Hub Task Force, including the feasibility study for a mid-sized performance space. Number 3, solicit expressions of interest from the heritage and cultural community and other applicable public interest groups. Number 4, investigate the feasibility of relocating and incorporating the Brantford Farmers Market into a community, heritage, and cultural space. Item number 5, investigate the feasibility and demand for a large shared community space that could accommodate charitable events and organizations such as the Brantford Symphony Orchestra's annual book fair, or the Community Resource Services, Brantford Food Bank rather, Christmas Baskets program. Number 6, develop a budget for a community, heritage, and cultural space in Brantford if a project is deemed desired. Number 7, identify a location for a community, heritage, and cultural space in Brantford if the project is deemed desired. Number 8, develop a feasibility study and action plan that outlines how the task force can be a catalyst and advocate for the project. And G, that the term of the task force be established until such time as the task force, in consultation with support staff, recommends their disbandment having achieved their mandate. And lastly, but not leastly, H, that the Community, Heritage, and Cultural Space Task Force be directed to report to Committee of the Whole, Operations and Administration on a proposed location and capital and operational funding needs and proposed sources by December 31, 2021. And let me say thank you to Sarah Monroe for writing that filibuster of a resolution for us, which incorporates pretty much everything Councillor Antosky and I thought, and then some. Mr. Chair, I'll hit on the high points of this. First of all, Councillor Antosky's committee, which has been renamed, but was originally tasked with checking out the viability and location for a mid-sized theater, has done stellar work, and their work will be back to us, as it said in the resolution, later in this year. In the meantime, we'll get busy with respect to the consultations that we're going to do. And there are a number of very exciting components to this. Councillor Antosky and I see this as a facility that operates under one roof, that operates in a City of Brantford facility with the participant community partner organizations looking after their own space, their own collection, their own exhibitions, their own performances, and the City of Brantford being the host in the building, with the City of Brantford maintaining the common spaces that would serve all these components. We have a number of museum partners, and lest I omit one, I won't mention them by name, but they know who they are and they're out there. And some of them are quite eager to get going on this. And there are some minor partners in this that I think are going to, to be very eager to partner on this as well. And they don't know who they are yet, although we have an inkling of who we want to talk to. And I think the thing that truly takes this to the next level, Mr. Chair, is the consideration of making this a lively space, a space that has a number of uses going on inside, which feed off one another and which create all sorts of life and activity. And the ones that came to mind for Councillor Antosky and I are the relocation of the farmers market and the opportunity to create some multi-purpose space. So organizations like Christmas Baskets and organizations like the Symphony Orchestra don't have to go begging hat in hand every year trying to find a location. We can certainly accommodate them in a space that they wouldn't be using for 12 months, but rather for maybe 2 or 3 months at the very outside. And that may allow other organizations to begin to do similar charitable work. Again, like the museums, like the theaters, like the performing arts groups, simply concentrating on the stories they want to tell, the performances they want to do, and the activities they want to conduct without being responsible for bricks and mortar. And in the case of things like food baskets, having to stump every year to find a location, and most times coming down to the 11th hour. So what we've got before us is a period of study. It's a period of reflection. And I would hope that everybody here today will support this and allow us to go forward and begin this investigation. And Councillor Antosky and I promise you that we'll have something back here before the end of the year to give you a chance to say yes or no or maybe to this. But the important thing for us, I think, is to get started on this today. And I'd hope to get unanimous approval just to allow this to proceed. I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to obtain some funding from the provincial government to offset any sort of investigative costs that we have. And that'll be one of the first things that we undertake to study. Mr. Chair, thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. Up next, we have Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to throw water on this, but I have some concerns. I've sat since its inception on the Cultural Hub Committee, and there's been a lot done there and a lot of good things done there. And now it would appear that what that committee has to offer this proposed committee is a study that we had done. And we can give them the study, that's not an issue, but somehow we've become part of something much larger. And I guess my concern with it is it started out looking for a mid-size performance space for the city, and that's what I signed up for. And then there was another task force created to do the museum and archive facility. And now it's grown into this very large consolidated thing that my concern is we lose focus on the things we were trying to achieve by trying to achieve something that's much larger and much more complex, and it's going to slow down the process of both entities trying to move forward. That's my concern with this. The two entities that were created to find something specific get merged to find something even larger than what was proposed in the first place. And well, bigger's good, bigger's not always best. And the smaller pieces of the bigger can get lost in that mumbo jumbo. We've got a lot of public participation with the theater group, and I don't know what happens to them. I think 4 move forward, but they could be from anywhere. So the folks that have been working on this all along will suddenly be out of work, so to speak. So I'll listen to hear more, but I'm going to take some convincing to support this, because I'm not sure it's in the best interest. I think everybody has their best interests at heart, but I think what we're doing might just slow down a process that's really gained momentum, created a lot of partnerships that are interested, at least in the committee that I'm with, and now it's going to get married to another committee that I don't think's even met yet. So I'm not sure how that all fits together and works well. I know what we had was working very well, and it's coming to a conclusion. And I would hate to jeopardize that by trying to then say, okay, this is great, but now we're going to make it even bigger and bolder. That's when things start dropping over the cliff. And that's my concern with this. So I'll listen to the debate, but right now I can tell you what side I'm on, and I think you know what side I'm on. But I'd like to hear the debate, and maybe go ahead, convince me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Councillor Vanderstel, you're up.
That's a good line, Councillor Sless. I'm going to play Battleship here. F4. F4, investigate the feasibility of relocating, incorporating the Brantford Farmers Market. I understand I think what is behind this this resolution, to find creative solutions for public use spaces that incorporate a lot of different types of things and populations, and the cluster effect, and it works quite well in many settings and in many cities as well. I get that, but I can sit with investigate. I'm not too sure I can sit long with the idea of relocation, simply because of the upgrades and purpose-driven upgrades that we've implemented at the farmers market over the years for that use. But just through you, Mr. Chair, to the mover and the seconder, inside of this field of investigation, will there also be like a supplementary investigation to find out what the possible uses for a vacant farmers market might be, or is that beyond your scope of your proposed study?
So Councillor Vanderstel, I don't believe we can ask councillors questions. Are you asking staff?
I can withdraw my question if that's the case. I was looking for clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you'll be able to get such clarification in Councillor Curry's second speaking opportunity. So Councillor Antosky, did you have anything further, Councillor Vanderstel?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor McCurry will probably answer this too. I would suspect that further uses of the farmers market would sit outside of this mandate, but certainly something to be considered. But Councillor McCurry, that's not something we've discussed. And to Councillor Sess's comments, thank you, first of all. We have had a group that has done an excellent job, and we're coming very close to the end of the mandate, which is why you see some of the dates shifting here, just to make sure that the mandate is completed without being rushed and is done properly, and it accomplishes what it's meant to do. But just for some clarification, it did start as a task force for a mid-sized performance theater. We had 2 consultant reports done. There was a phase 1 and a phase 2, which then deemed that it was too narrow in focus. We needed to really look at our cultural community in Brantford. So it became a cultural hub, because it was seen that we had all kinds of visual artists and musicians, and there was a broader community in our cultural community that wasn't being that didn't have a home, basically. So that's where that got broadened, and that's where we were going. And I think that by having not included the museums, which is obviously part of our culture, that maybe in hindsight, that is certainly a group that should have been brought to the table. When we were having these great big meetings at the Sanderson and having all the groups that we could, we probably should have taken a look at that. So certainly in theory, this makes a lot of sense to me. If we are looking to create a home for our cultural community, which is quite vast and with some significant range within our community, to be able to give them a home and to be able to create an area where it could become a tourism area, because they're able to go to this one spot that has all kinds of things that would interest mom, dad, uncle, brother, son, daughter, right? You spend a day out. So that's how we got here. For those of you who sat on the task force for the cultural hub, we did narrow down a lot of issues. In the end, we still have some things that we're grappling with, and I suspect that those will be the same things that we will grapple with as we move forward. But I think that if we are truly looking for a cultural hub, that we did miss the museums, and that should be part of this investigation. And I think that we should use the good work, but continue to include the people who were part of that good work. It may not be everybody at the table, because we can't have a task force of 24 people or whatever that would be. And I know that the Consolidated Museums has not met yet. So I think we really need to, if this gets approved, we really need to make sure that we create balance around that table, and that the groups are properly represented, and that we are, again, making sure we do some really good community consultation, because this has changed a little bit. So I just wanted to add some clarification for that in terms of where my head is around this. Thank you.
Next up, Councillor Van Tilburg.
Reading this, I see it as visionary, ambitious, and I have a little reservations as well, because we want to engage in a group that has yet to have a meeting. And I almost wish that they would have the meeting first and then see how the two groups actually know how they're going to interact together. Because it sounds really good from what I'm reading. It's just that you don't know until you don't know, and you don't know until you ask. And I just don't know the structure of the group that hasn't met yet. And I always think that that's really important, to see what kind of a cohesive group you have. one group is near the completion and they have accomplished a lot of work. So I'm kind of wondering how you determine who's taking the lead on this, and perhaps again those questions can be asked, because like I said, there's some visionary aspects here that will take probably a significant amount of time just to get the ball rolling and then to get to the end game. I don't think anything's written in stone on where you're going to end up. That's just telling us kind of where you want to go. But sometimes you got to have that conversation with everybody just to make sure that everybody wants to go in that direction. And so there's a lot of entities that are mentioned in this resolution. So I'm going to support it, but I would like to have some answers to those questions before we come back to council at the latest.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Up next, Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respect my ward mate, Councillor Slez's comments very much. I think a lot of good work has been done by some great people, very, very committed community people, and I'd hate to see that work get lost. I think that will be a disaster. And so I think there needs to be some reassurances here that that work will be adopted by the new task force if it does get approved. I'm a little bit concerned about including the farmers market. Yes, it's a heritage, but it's also a roof for businesses. And I'm not sure if that's one burden too many for this task force. This is a big ask and a big commitment from the community and the city and staff. So I'm certainly leaning towards supporting this. I'm honored to have my name on for consideration. Anyway, I hope we can put Councillor Slez's concerns to rest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Your Worship.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I came into this. This is a hard one because I love ambitious projects, but I'm like Councillor Slez. I'm really concerned about is this so ambitious and too ambitious that it might collapse under its own weight? Because to some degree, I see the concept, which is a multi-use facility, which, having a farmer's market and what that requires is not a space that could readily be used by a museum, which needs a permanent space for its facilities and for its displays, and then of course a performance center. So I'm concerned about that, but it's intriguing enough that I'd be prepared to vote for it. But I will say one thing. I have spent a lot of time as well on the Cultural Hub Task Force, and clearly that's an important priority for our community, and that is a small performance facility. And I'm really concerned, what's the message out of this resolution? Is it telling the Cultural Hub Task Force, well, we're winding up, so it doesn't matter what you're going to say to us? And that would be the wrong message. And I don't think that is the message, because they're looking, the task force, at two, right now it's come down to sort of two proposals that they're looking at, waiting for one laureate to finish their submission. And it could well be that one of those two submissions, as the Cultural Hub Task Force moves into its final phase, is just so persuasive, it has so much to commend it, that we have to accept the fact the Cultural Hub Task Force, if we're going to be respectful to all the efforts that they put into it, may come back to us in August and September and say, we've got this great proposal, and this is, we really want to move forward this to get a small performance facility in place now and not run the risk of it, as Councillor Slez says, collapsing under the weight of a program or project that's too ambitious. So I'm going to vote in favor of it because I'm intrigued by it, and it'd be interesting to see what comes out of it. But it's a reserved vote in favor. I reserve the option to say Yeah, I liked it. I'm intrigued by it. But now what I'm seeing, so this would be in August or September from the Cultural Hub Task Force, I really think there's a great opportunity here that we can't let slip, and we got to go forward to get it in place. So qualified support, waiting on what the Cultural Hub Task Force does. I'm trying not to prejudge their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you are doing an excellent job tonight.
Thank
Very
you.
well. So I have all the same concerns that everyone else has already voiced. What I'm first wondering is if it would be maybe appropriate to get a update report from what's happening with this committee, not waiting until December, because just in case maybe things are occurring that, you know, maybe we decide we need to drop off the farmers market or some other pieces, and I don't having those discussions with that group. So I'm wondering if staff would have a problem if we asked for a updated report on September. Small report can be a memo, just to let us know where we are. Would that be possible?
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Finney, Director of Economic Development Tourism. I'm certain that we could bring an interim report forward, Councillor Weaver.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. And then just my second comment. So I'm going to support this, but I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm sure most of us are going to be very concerned with sticker shock when we see the cost associated with doing this. So I hope the task force has a grant writer that's really good, because we're going to definitely need some support to fund something like this. And when the rubber hits the road, when we make that final decision, if there isn't some type of funding allocated to it, that's not all taxpayer money, I think it's going to be a problem to get passed at this council. Thank you.
Excellent. So seeing no more first-time speakers, before we move into second-time speakers, I have it noted here in the roadmap that Councillor Antosky wanted to move an amendment, but I believe that was covered.
Yes, that's correct. Councillor McCreary covered it when he read the resolution.
Excellent. Just wanted to confirm before we moved on to second-time speakers. Councillor McCreary, you were in the queue, but your hand has gone down. Did you want your speaking opportunity you have reserved?
I will still wait a while.
Excellent. Okay, crossed off. To never speak, no. Next up, Councillor Johnsles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I haven't been convinced. Not that it's a bad idea, I'm just not convinced. I think what we're doing here is we're trying to swallow the whole elephant instead of taking bites. And when you try and do that, you'll end up with indigestion. There's no question in my mind. I wish I could support it, but I can see, and the mayor had a very good line, collapsing under its own weight. And I think it's so ambitious and so bold and so big that I think that I can see that happening. And I don't want that to happen. But I think working independently, I keep coming back to that, but to me, that makes the most sense. You're taking pieces and you're putting them together. And I think that's far better than to try and create a whole giant project all in one swoop. You're going to get overwhelmed with it. And the tag, like someone said, sticker shock. No question, Councillor Weaver, there's going to be sticker shock. I don't know how you bring in, well, I won't go down those lines, but I have concerns with it. I have real concerns with it. So it's going to pass. I can see that. I can count too, but it concerns me. And I wish the committee well. It appears by the resolution that I'm on it. So I don't know. I know I'm on one committee. Apparently I'm on another one too, which I find interesting. But I'll leave it there for now, and we'll see where we go with this. But it's going to pass, and I hope it really does well. I honestly do. I really have concerns about all the work that that the committee that I am on, or the task force that I am on, has done, and I hope it's not for naught. I really do. And then it gets swollen up and swallowed up and somehow becomes part of something that's so grandiose, and we're back to square one in 2 years from now and nothing has happened. And I could see that happening. I've seen it happen so many times in my years on city council that it really concerns me that something really good could turn real bad in a real hurry through nobody's fault. It just, we tried to do something bold and it didn't work. So good luck. I'll see how the vote goes. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Celeste, next on the docket, Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone because I know that some of the task force members are likely watching tonight. And I really want to thank everybody for the support of the work that they've done. And they're very concerned as well that they're going to be left in dust. So I want us to be able to assure them that as we investigate these pieces going forward, that we're going to keep all the interest in the stakeholders involved. It's really, really important because these are passionate people. They have been really dedicated and reliable and good ideas. And I think the mayor's quite right. This is a step at a time, right? Let's not prejudge everything because the group is not quite done. They may come back to council with something that's acceptable to everyone. We may not, we don't know yet. There's still some pieces. This may be the next step. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone for their kind words and their support of what's been done so far. It has been a long haul, and so I can understand. As much as Councillor McCurry, I want to see this in our community. I want to get a home for our cultural community, and I guess we're just looking at different options to get that there.
Thank you, Councillor Antosky. Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great comments by everyone. I agree that this needs to be approached with, we approach this with the proper strategy, a well thought out strategy for success. And it'll have to be in bite-sized chunks. I think I agree with everybody else that the sticker price would frighten a lot of people off. But then I think about this small theatre, mid-sized theatre in Cambridge, this side of Cambridge, that was sponsored by a number of large corporations and givers to the community, Toyota and many others. It's a beautiful theatre. I don't know if you've been there. It's in a beautiful area as well, which is close to the river and some beautiful stone buildings. So I think there needs to be a vision, a concept of what this may look like, an estimation of the cost, an estimation of what's going to be done and when over periods of time. And this could be, a 5, 6, 7, 8-year project, or maybe longer, until we achieve that, that final center. Anyhow, that's I'm going to support it. I want more. I need a lot more information. I think we all do, and I think it's worth our time to look at how big a project this is, what it's going to cost, and how it's going to be, how we're going to convince ourselves and staff and the community that it's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Councillor McCurry.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And Councillor Utley is exactly correct. This is all about more information. That's what the resolution is about. It's allowing a group of us to go forward and provide council with a report back at year end that says whether we can do this, whether we can do some components of it, whether some things are silly, whether it's going to be too expensive, whether it's going to be too inexpensive. These are all the questions that the committee is going to answer to you. When we answer to you at the end of the year, you'll have those answers. And, prior to that date, the Cultural Hub Committee may very well have a recommendation that we can adopt on the face of it and proceed with that, in which case this committee moves on and that facility establishes itself as a standalone somewhere else. It's all up in the air, and I appreciate everybody's concerns, but my gosh, we're not building or tearing anything down yet. We're just going to do some study. We're not even going to spend any money. Brings me to the source of money. Of course, it's going to be expensive, but we've already had a look at provincial and federal government support for this, and it appears to be possible. We've already had some very preliminary looks into the community for sponsorships, and it looks as though we can do very well for there. And if you look at some of the money we now spend on supporting cultural institutions in the city of Brantford, and if you look at you know, the kind of money we spend now, we're partway there in terms of operating costs as well. Councillor Vanderstel asked about the future of the Brantford Farmers Market, and Councillor Antosky replied quite correctly that if we do relocate it, it's going to be at a far better facility than it's in now. And you know, whether or not we dispose of that facility, lease it, or whatever, that'll be, maybe there'll be a recommendation that comes out of our committee with respect to the finances of that and what that means to financing this project. Someone said that this is visionary, and I think that I think it is visionary. A friend of mine once said, "Think big," right? And this is thinking big, and it's something that we can celebrate in the community. It's something that we can engage the community in. And there may come out of the committees, and you know, the committee structure remains a bit up in the air. Councillor Antosky and I may have a chat about whether or not the size of the community component needs to be increased. Certainly, our intention was not to diminish the work of the Cultural Hub Committee, which I think Councillor Celeste was feeling very badly about. No, it's not to diminish that at all. In fact, their work product is going to be instrumental in this, whether they become part of this larger facility or whether they don't. So, I mean, there's a million reasons not to support this, but there's only one reason to support it, and that's to allow this committee to be created and to come back to you and tell you whether or not we can do this thing, and whether it's something that's financially viable, whether it's something the community can support, and whether it turns out to be something that we can look back on, like we look back on the creation of Harmony Square and saying, you know what, there was some controversy and difference of opinion at the start, but now that it's built, my God, it's going to be a great thing for the city of Brantford. So let's keep that outlook, and just remember, this is just all about allowing half a dozen or 10 of us to go off and do some work for a few months and come back and let you tell us whether we've done well or not. So I do appreciate everybody's support tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. I don't see any other speakers. I hope you'll indulge me as I take an opportunity to speak on this item that is incredibly meaningful to me. Since before I sat on council, I've been providing input and commentary on this as somebody who does work in the arts community. And, you know, I guess I could consider myself an artist, but not nearly as talented as some of the incredible people in our community. And what I wanted to say was, if you look into the world, you can see art in so many different forms. And I know I've said this speech before at this very chambers. You know, have somebody come in and install cabinets in your kitchen who isn't an artisan, and you can see the difference between that and something that's factory made. Or, you know, the work that this community has done to beautify itself with art. And I was thinking of my speaking opportunity and what I was going to say, and I was thinking, you know, this was the organic progression of the cultural task force, and I immediately came to the conclusion that that couldn't be farther from the truth. This is anything but organic. There is an absolutely breathtaking piece of art on display in downtown Brantford on the Brantford Public Library, and it's a piece that was a collaboration of work by over a dozen artists of different mediums that came together to create a permanent fixture of art in our community. And to me, this isn't an organic progression. This is the result of thousands of hours of some of the most creative artists in this community of almost every medium that you can imagine, music or pastel or theater or, you know, okay, there's a lot of different mediums of art, but they have all come together in some capacity and had their fingerprints in creating what this resolution is trying to capture. And honest to God, as difficult as this motion were to have been created, and yes, thank you, Sarah, for your immaculate work on this project, you can't put into words what we're trying to describe. We are trying to describe what is the next logical progression of this community, a place where all forms of art are appreciated, whether it's history or heritage or culture or music or sport, etc. This is the one place in Brantford where that is clearly prominent. And I think that this has merit. I really think it does. I think that if you bring together some of the greatest minds in this region, in this industry, they will come out with something absolutely incredible. And that is worth investigating. So I'm going to support this because I can't see anything bad coming from it. I could see 4 separate ideas that we just decide to pursue one or the other. I see one major amazing idea. I see 100 million little ideas. Maybe this will inspire one of those groups to go off and do something great. Maybe this will get us provincial, national, or worldwide recognition, because that's what Brantford's good at. Brantford's good at making noise and doing things differently, doing things that nobody else has done. And what a better way to say it than with a motion like this today. There you go. Sorry, I have to chair the meeting now. Seeing no further speakers, Deputy Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Item 7.3 carries on recorded vote of 9-2. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Martin, and Toski, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley, Weaver, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Sless and Carpenter.
And just like that, we are at the end of the meeting. Item number 8, notices of motion. There is one notice of motion. Councillor McCreary, could you please read the title of your motion?
Mr. Chair, actually, I have 2, and Councillor Martin will be the seconder on both. The first is the Francis Street traffic control, and the second is Project Noisemaker.
Excellent. Okay, seeing no further notice of motion, item number 9 is adjournment. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Well done, Councillor Wall.
Hold on, Councillor.
Oh, wonderful.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Well.
Good meeting, everybody.